Minister Bennett, thanks for taking the time to join us here today. This is one of the first chances we've had, if not the first, to speak with you since the splitting up of Indigenous Affairs. Can you tell us how Indigenous people are going to benefit from the splitting up of this ministry?
So firstly, we have to make sure the Indigenous people know that it's not just splitting up a ministry. We're dissolving it, and we're starting again with 2 new ministries and ministers, just as was prescribed in the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples, where they had been out talking to communities, knowing that we have to do these 2 jobs. One is provide the services, but the other is to move people to self-determination where we know people do better. So my job is to help get communities out from under the Indian Act, to re-aggregate nations, and so that they can be in charge of their own health, education, child welfare, and all of those things.
How do you separate rights from services?
Well, I think the services have been, I think there was it was said once here in North Winnipeg, how come poor people have programs and middle-class people have institutions? My job is to build those Indigenous-led institutions and governments. Dr. Philpott's job is to provide the services that are required, but both in partnership with First Nations, Inuit and Métis in Canada.
The government is about halfway through its mandate right now, and some big pledges, when I think particularly of ending boil water advisories, seem a far ways off. Where do you think things are at right now with some of those major pledges from the last election?
Well, I think we're very confident we're going to get the long-term boil water advisories done in the 5 years that we said, in that by having that consistent funding from Budget 2016 in a 5-year hunk, it meant that we didn't have to do that stop-start that was always in the way when funding was only for 1 or 2 years. And also by us not only dealing with the ones with the long-term boil water advisories, but approving lots of projects, over 200 projects in communities where they have a medium or a high risk system that's not tipped over into a long-term boil water advisory. So we're working on all of those together and tracking it on a website. And I think people are as optimistic as we are that we're going to get this done. Did
you think you'd be further along at this point in this government's mandate on that issue?
Well, I think it's always, we're always impatient about can't we get more done faster? And of course, there's been ones that tip over into long term that get added to the scorecard, but we're gonna. I think we knew it was a 5-year project. Otherwise, we would have said 4 years. So the 5 years is what it's going to take to get it done.
I'd like to move to the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. The commissioners were before the Senate and the House of Commons committees this week. Do you feel that this inquiry deserves an extension and more funding?
Well, we haven't received a formal request for that. I think that the commissioners know that they will be able to do a good piece of work. I think that the conversation is yet to be seen in terms of what a different work plan would look like. I'm very much looking forward to seeing the interim report that is due in November, and as you know, that was to look at all the previous studies such that we don't have to redo old ground, that there may be some recommendations that could come out of that. And also, our government's determined that the things that we know have to happen, the total overhaul and dismantling of the child welfare industry, racism and sexism in policing, housing, the kind of shelter service, we need to get going on those, just like the safe transport through the Highway of Tears. So there are things that we are going on, but I think that there's no question that there were problems at the beginning, particularly in terms of them being able to set up their offices and their computer systems and all of that in a timely fashion. But I think the Whitehorse gathering was trauma-informed, culturally safe in the ways that we know that governments have never had to do this kind of work before.
But are you open to an extension?
Well, we'll have to see what the plan looks like.
given, you know, how high the hopes were for this inquiry and the amount of resignations and the trouble that we're seeing play out in the media, has this been a bit of a disappointment for you so far this first year?
I think, as everybody says, everybody knew this wasn't going to be easy. Everybody knew that this is just an area that for over a decade the emotions are high, that it's tough work, and I think that the families that have been close to this are feeling well served by it. I think they have obviously work to do to get families coast to coast to coast to feel more involved. I think they had thought that maybe families would just be involved when the commission was coming to their region, but there needs to be more engagement of the families, and I think the communication has not been what it needed to be, and I know they're redoubling their efforts to improve on that.
Minister, just to bring it back to where we started with the department split and what's been done to support a renewed relationship with Indigenous people, and what does that mean to you, this renewed relationship?
As you know, the Prime Minister put into the mandate letters of all the ministers that it is a recognition of rights, respect, cooperation, and partnership. And that means our partners have to feel that their rights are being recognized, that this is respectful, that there is real cooperation, and that it feels like a partnership. And so that's and so now with my new job as Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs, my job is to make sure that that's happening across all government departments, and that working with the provinces and territories so that we can really make progress. I think we're very happy with the beginning of the recognition of rights tables, over 50 of them, where communities are coming together to draw down jurisdiction in the things they want charge of, whether that's a fishery or a child welfare system, an education system. I think we're starting to make progress, and it was pretty frustrating when communities would take 20 years and $30 million to maybe get a treaty. We've got, I think, exciting work ahead of us, and working with Dr. Philpott is just going to be amazing, and we really are redoubling our efforts, and we're so that obviously with the Prime Minister's speech at the UN yesterday, I think that's never happened before. This really is a different relationship where the Prime Minister of the country could actually explain to the world the work that we've still got to do together.
Minister Bennett, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you.